The final team that we're going to throw out there.
Taking a swing here.
Big swing. And
this one's you especially. This is your swing. You're taking the talent swing on this one.
This one's me because originally we had a team like Ole Miss in the mix, and they are absolutely still in the mix next year. If we had 13 teams that can make the playoff, they would be in there. One I want to throw in there, they were not even a bowl-eligible team last year, was the Auburn Tigers. Because, Dolan, I'm looking at this roster right now. Man, if they can't do it next year, it might be curtains for Hugh Freeze, because this talent on this roster is outrageous, man. You got Jackson Arnold coming in at quarterback from Oklahoma, showed some signs last year. It was a horrible situation in Oklahoma last year. So, of course, it wasn't the best situation for him in terms of offensive line, and the receiving core was ridiculously banged up last year. Like the top 4 or 5 receivers, it seemed like last year, were out almost the entire season. So, was not a great situation in Oklahoma last year. Jackson Arnold, still a very talented player coming into Auburn. He will have a lot of talent to work with at Auburn, though, because that receiving core, led by Cam Coleman, led by Eric Singleton Jr., coming in from Georgia Tech, one of the top receivers in the country. Auburn has 2 of my top 10 wide receivers in college football going into next year. Malcolm Simmons was a really good player as a true freshman last year as well. Perry Thompson made some plays as a true freshman last year. So they have a loaded receiving core. The offensive line was an issue last year, but they bring back a lot of guys who played a lot. Connor Liu is one of the top centers in the country. Xavier Chaplin was one of the top tackles in the transfer portal that got him from Virginia Tech. And then defensively, man, they've got guys. They got Keldrick Falk at edge rusher. He just missed my edge rankings. I think he's a very, very physically talented player who, again, could be a top draft prospect for next year. And then the secondary, man, is really loaded with young talent like Caleb Harris, really good player. Jay Crawford's a really good player as well. So you just look at this Auburn team. They have one of the best receiving corps in the country. They kind of retooled the offensive line a little bit by getting in Xavier Chaplin. They brought in Jackson Arnold at quarterback. And then the defense has a lot of really good players that are young players as well. I think Auburn has a big chance to break out next year.
They have the makings of what should be a well-rounded team, a good defensive team. They're losing, I would argue, their best pass rusher in Jalen McLeod, but they've got others coming in. And I think I look at this team and I go, it really is about what we think of Jackson Arnold. Yeah, that's where we're at. Now. Again, it was former 5-star recruit or borderline? Was a 5-star. I know you're always on top of that. No, I almost I have a wonder not just about his arm and getting to throw those fantastic receivers, because like you mentioned, Cam Coleman's as talented as any kid in the country. Eric Singleton's done great work the last 2 years for Georgia Tech. You mentioned Malcolm Simmons as well, getting Horatio Fields in from Wake Forest. He was a solid player for them. But Arnold, I almost wonder, because I think back to Oklahoma upsetting Alabama last year, right? And Arnold beat them with his legs. And we know Hugh Freeze likes a quarterback that can move too and can get involved in the run game. So I think he might try to use him as more of the dual threat that we saw late down the stretch last season. And honestly, you know what it is for me with Arnold being on a team like this with potentially a much better offensive line and obviously a much better receiving core is allowing him to play free. Has it felt like at times when we've seen him, he's played too tight? Like he has to, like at Oklahoma, he had to make up for everything, and just it was a poor offensive line. They were one of the worst pass protecting teams in the Power 4. Was that right? I think I remember that stat. Yeah. I mean, so many injuries, so much dysfunction on offense last year, still managed to have some good moments down the stretch. That's what it comes down to. Because honestly, for Auburn the last couple of years, I know Peyton Thorne had some flashes, but Auburn's had a wicked talented team the last couple of years too, and just not enough production at quarterback. If they can get that with Arnold this year, then you're right. They're a dangerous team with a good defense, with a good running game. Hugh Freeze teams always find ways to run the football. It doesn't matter who's in the backfield. He schemes it up very, very well. But to have this set of weapons and this offensive line you mentioned led by the center, Connor Liu, one of the best players in the country, Arnold's got a chance. It is. I will give you this. This team gives Jackson Arnold a legitimate chance. Yeah. Last year's Oklahoma team never did that. They didn't give Arnold a chance. Yeah. They didn't give Michael Hawkins a chance. We could talk about Oklahoma later. We will. This team gives, when you have that much talent around you, and then a defense that can also make stops. You mentioned the secondary could be a really good unit. Yeah. When you have all of that working together, you just need to go out there and play freely. So is there a chance? Absolutely. I think Auburn has as much talent with the recruiting base certainly that they've gotten into the last couple of years. They have as much talent as most teams in the SEC. They need the quarterback to go out there and execute offensively.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at, the two true freshmen they had in that secondary played a lot in the secondary last year in Caleb Harris and Jay Crawford. Both had 75-plus grades last year as true freshmen in the SEC. That's very, very good for two true freshmen. And you mentioned that's a big thing with Jackson Arnold that I'm holding out hope for is that, like you said, he never had even a chance at Oklahoma with how bad that offensive line was and then how beat up that receiving core was. It legitimately, I looked it up, and you combine the offensive line grade and receiving grade, it was one of the worst supporting casts in college football. Not only Power 5, but also FBS in total because of how bad those two units were. All the injuries and also the offensive line, just how bad they played last year.
Do you want a fun fact as far as grading goes with Auburn? They were the highest overall offense, defense, everything. They were the highest graded team in the country that had a losing record last year. Sandwiched at 23rd between Florida and Colorado.
Yeah.
This is what you're talking about is a team that just in tight games especially, I think about which game was it? Was it the Oklahoma game where Peyton Thorne threw the pick six late? Yeah. And it was just those moments they just can't pull out games because they didn't have the quarterback play to do it. But they were the highest graded team in the country that had a losing record last year. When you're grading that high, even most of the teams in their range that I'm seeing, 8, 9, 10 game winners, right? They're only 2 spots behind Georgia in these rankings. I go, if this is how they're grading and this is how their team is playing on the field, they need to win more ball games, and the regression, in theory, should come, especially with all the talent they've added in the portal.
And exactly. They graded out that high, and I think they improved too, right? So there is question marks about the run game now after losing Jarquez Hunter at running back, but, they brought back almost a lot of the other key contributors from last year. And then that offense could really be taking off with guys like Jackson Arnold and Eric Singleton Jr. coming in. Like that, you're bringing in a top 5 receiver in the country and a former 5-star quarterback who finally has a chance now at Auburn. I think Auburn, this is the year. If this is not the year, I think they'd be looking for a new coach.
You're going to learn a lot about, I think, Arnold's character, too. Coming back from last year, it's going to be, like we've already put out here and from certain people, shout out Zach Tantillo, about expectations this year with this amount of talent. That's going to be the biggest thing is Arnold and even Hugh Freeze handling those expectations and being able to go out, just be loose. Yeah. Just go out there, play loose, be yourself. You've got a ton of talent around you. Just use it in an efficient manner.
And they're recruiting at a very high level too. Yeah. So that's another thing. They are bringing in talent. It's just a matter of can you put it together and make a run for the college football playoff next year. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.